Dr. Arva Venlax slumped at her desk, head in her hands, staring bleakly at the latest dismal reports. Yet another potential treatment had failed to reverse the catastrophic infertility plaguing her people. Years of tireless research and desperate experiments, all for nothing. The Krellian race was hurtling towards extinction with no solution in sight. A chime at the door jolted Arva from her spiraling thoughts. "Enter!" she called, voice cracking from exhaustion and despair. Her assistant Tarl rushed in, his usually stoic face lit up with excitement. "Dr. Venlax, you need to see this." He thrust a datapad into her hands. The deep space scans picked up an unidentified vessel entering our system. It's broadcasting some kind of distress signal. Arva frowned at the unexpected news. Krellian ships rarely ventured beyond their sector these days, too consumed by the infertility crisis to spare resources for exploration. An alien visitor was the last thing they needed now. "What do they want? We're in no state to render aid," she said dismissively, turning back to her work. Surely the High Council would send the ship away to minimize risk of contamination. "That's just it," Tarl insisted. "The ship's occupant claims to be a doctor from a species called humans. He says he picked up our transmissions about the infertility epidemic and wants to help." Arva's eyes widened. An alien doctor? Offering to assist with their greatest crisis? It seemed too incredible to be true. She quickly scanned the initial reports, heart pounding as she took in the details. The human called himself Dr. Ethan Davis. Preliminary scans showed his biology was remarkably similar to Krellian's, but with a few key differences. His genetic structure appeared to have evolved unique redundancies and resilience, and most shocking of all, his reproductive system showed no signs of the infertility markers that doomed Arva's people. "Get Dr. Davis on a secure channel immediately," Arva ordered, hardly daring to hope, "and notify the High Council. If this human can really help us, we have no time to waste." As Tarl rushed to carry out her commands, Arva felt the first spark of real optimism she'd known in years. Had the universe finally answered her people's desperate prayers? Could this strange alien hold the key to their salvation? She steeled herself, determined to find out. The fate of her entire species might rest on this pivotal encounter. For all their sakes, she had to get it right. Dr. Ethan Davis materialized in the gleaming Krellian transporter room, his heart racing with equal parts excitement and trepidation. He still couldn't quite believe he was here, the first human to make contact with this fascinating alien species. When he'd intercepted their desperate transmissions about the infertility crisis, he knew he had to try to help. Ethan had spent years researching reproductive medicine back on Earth, driven by a deep empathy for those struggling to conceive. He'd made significant breakthroughs in understanding the complex interplay of genetics, environment, and technology on human fertility. If any of that knowledge could aid the Krellians, he was determined to share it. A trio of tall, ethereal figures glided into the room, their silver blue skin and luminous eyes marking them as distinctly non-human, despite their otherwise familiar bipedal forms. The one in the center, a female wearing what appeared to be medical garb, stepped forward. "Dr. Davis, I am Dr. Arva Venlax, lead scientist tasked with solving our infertility epidemic. On behalf of the Krellian people, thank you for coming." Her voice was melodic and precise, translated seamlessly by the universal linguistic matrix Ethan wore. He inclined his head respectfully. "Dr. Venlax, it's an honor to be here. I come in peace and friendship, with the utmost desire to help however I can. Your people's plight moved me deeply." Arva gestured for him to follow. "Come, let us waste no time. We have prepared a laboratory for your use and are eager to hear your insights. But I must warn you, we've exhausted every avenue we could conceive of with no success. What makes you think a human can solve a problem that has confounded Krellian science for decades?" Ethan met her challenging gaze unflinchingly as they walked. "Your transmission said the infertility markers emerged about 50 years ago and now affect all Krellians, correct? On Earth, we've dealt with similar widespread fertility declines, though none so severe. But we've developed techniques for identifying the root causes and creating targeted therapies to reverse the damage." He called up some files on the datapad they'd given him. "We've found that fertility is inextricably linked to not just biology, but also environmental and societal factors. Toxins, nutrient deficiencies, cultural stressors, all can impact reproductive viability. My guess is something in your recent past introduced a threat that your biology couldn't adapt to in time. Arva nodded slowly. Our models did show a correlation with the introduction of a new power source around that time, but how could that spark such a devastating chain reaction? Let's find out, Ethan said confidently as they entered the lab. I'll need access to your historical, environmental, and medical data, as well as samples from as many of your people as possible. If we can identify the common factor that triggered the infertility, we can work on reversing it. Arva input her security clearance, pulling up a staggering wealth of data. You shall have everything you need, Dr. Davis. The full resources of Krellian science are at your disposal. As Ethan dove into the information, his mind raced with possibilities. He had a feeling the key lay in the unique adaptations that made human biology so resilient. If he could find a way to apply that to the Krellian genome to bolster their defenses and repair the damage, it was a monumental challenge, but he'd never been one to back down. With the brilliant Dr. Venlax by his side and the fate of an entire species on the line, Ethan had never felt more driven. He would find the solution no matter what it took. Days turned into weeks as Dr. Ethan Davis and Dr. Arva Venlax worked tirelessly to unravel the mystery of the Krellian infertility epidemic. They pored over countless data sets, analyzing environmental readings, medical scans, and genetic samples from across the planet. The lab became their second home, a gleaming haven of advanced technology and relentless inquiry. Holographic displays flickered with complex models and simulations, while robotic assistants whirred and clicked, processing samples and running tests with inhuman precision. Ethan and Arva barely noticed the passage of time, taking turns snatching brief naps on the cot they'd set up in the corner. They subsisted on a steady stream of nutrient-rich Krellian energy pods, their minds too focused on the problem at hand to worry about proper meals. Every day brought new challenges, new dead ends to navigate. They tested countless theories and treatments, from gene therapies to nanotech interventions, each one failing to take hold in the Krellian genome. The pressure mounted with every disappointing result, the fate of an entire species resting on their shoulders. But through it all, Ethan and Arva remained united in their determination. They bounced ideas off each other in rapid-fire bursts of inspiration, their different perspectives and areas of expertise merging into a formidable force. When one flagged, the other was there to lend support and encouragement, refusing to let despair take hold. Ethan was impressed by Arva's brilliant mind and tireless dedication. She matched his own drive to find a solution, pushing through long hours fueled by a desperate need to save her people. As they worked side by side, a deep respect and camaraderie blossomed between them. But despite their best efforts, the answer remained maddeningly elusive. Every promising lead eventually hit a dead end. Every potential treatment failed to take hold. Ethan grew increasingly frustrated, feeling the weight of an entire species' hopes bearing down on him. Late one night, as they sat bleary-eyed amidst a sea of holographic projections, Arva let out a heavy sigh. "What if we're approaching this all wrong?" she mused, her usually confident voice tinged with doubt. "We've been so focused on trying to fix our own biology, but what if the solution lies elsewhere?" Ethan frowned, intrigued by her line of thought. "What do you mean?" Arva hesitated, as if afraid to voice the idea aloud. "Your human biology, it's remarkably resilient, adaptive. Your reproductive systems show none of the degradation that plagues ours, despite facing similar environmental stressors." She called up a simulation, showing two genetic models side by side. "Look at this. When we expose Krellian reproductive cells to the toxins we identified, they quickly deteriorate. But human cells under the same conditions, they fight back, repair the damage, preserve fertility." Ethan's eyes widened as he processed the implications. "Are you suggesting? What if the key to saving my species is yours?" Arva finished, her gaze a mix of hope and trepidation. "If we could find a way to integrate human fertility factors into the Krellian genome, it might give us the boost we need to overcome the infertility epidemic." Ethan leaned back, mind reeling at the audacious proposal. Using human genetic material to help the Krellians conceive, it was a wild, unprecedented idea. But the more he considered it, the more he realized it might be their best shot. "We need to be extremely careful," he warned. "Combining genetic material from two different species, it's never been done before." We have no idea what kind of unintended consequences it could unleash. Arva nodded solemnly. I'm well aware of the risks, but at this point we're facing extinction. We have to try something radical. She placed a hand on his arm, her silver blue skin cool against his. Dr. Davis, Ethan, you've already done so much for us, but I must ask one more thing. Would you be willing to provide a sample of your own genetic material? Your adaptations are particularly strong, and I believe they may hold the key. Ethan swallowed hard, the weight of the request settling over him. It was an enormous responsibility to literally give of himself to help an entire alien race survive. But looking into Arva's pleading eyes, he knew he couldn't refuse. I'll do it, he said firmly. Whatever it takes, we'll find a way to make this work. Relief and gratitude washed over Arva's face. Thank you, she breathed. You may well be our savior. As they set to work on the daring new plan, Ethan felt a renewed surge of determination. The challenges ahead were immense, but he knew that together, they would find a way to merge human and Krellian biology into a force strong enough to overcome any obstacle. The future of an entire species hung in the balance, and Ethan would not let them down. Ethan and Arva huddled over the lab bench, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of the microscope display. On the screen, two genetic sequences danced side by side. One human, one Krellian. There, Arva breathed, pointing to a specific segment of the human strand. That's the key, the resilience factor we've been searching for. Ethan leaned in, his brow furrowed in concentration. You're right, but how do we integrate it into the Krellian genome without disrupting the rest of the sequence? Arva bit her lip, a mischievous glint in her eye. What if we don't need to? What if the solution is simpler than we thought? She called up a new set of images, this time showing human and Krellian reproductive cells. Look at the similarities. The cellular structures are almost identical. What if... Ethan's eyes widened as he caught on to her train of thought. You're not suggesting... I am. Arva's voice was low and intense. What if the key to saving my species is not just human genetic material, but human nectar itself? Ethan felt a flush creep up his neck at the implications. Arva, the ethical considerations alone. She placed a hand on his arm, her silver blue skin cool against his. I know it's unconventional, but we're running out of time. If this could work... He met her gaze, seeing the desperate hope mingled with something else. Something that made his pulse quicken. Okay, let's run some simulations. See if it's even viable. They lost themselves in the work, testing and retesting, refining the hypothesis. And with each passing hour, the evidence mounted. Human nectar, with its hardy adaptations and resilient drive, seemed to be the missing piece of the puzzle. Arva's excitement was palpable as she pored over the results. This could be it, Ethan. The answer we've been searching for. He nodded slowly, his mind racing with the implications. But the logistics? How would we even go about it? Asking human males to donate? A sly smile played at the corners of Arva's mouth. Well, there is one human male who's already proven himself quite dedicated to the cause. Ethan's heart skipped a beat as her meaning sank in. Arva, are you sure? She stepped closer, her luminous eyes locked on his. I've never been more sure of anything. You're the key, Ethan. Your strength, your compassion, your essence. It's what my people need. He swallowed hard, feeling the weight of the moment, the fate of an entire species, resting on his shoulders and in his loins. But looking into Arva's eyes, seeing the trust and longing there, he knew he couldn't refuse. Okay, he whispered, I'll do it for your people, for you. She closed the distance between them, her lips brushing his ear as she murmured, Thank you, Ethan. You have no idea what this means to me. And then she was gone, leaving him alone in the lab with his racing thoughts and pounding heart. He took a deep, steadying breath, trying to wrap his mind around the incredible turn of events. He, Ethan Davis, was about to become the savior of an alien race, with the power of his own human virility. It was a heavy responsibility, a daunting task, but also, he couldn't deny, a thrilling one. As he set about making the necessary preparations, he couldn't help but marvel at the strange twists of fate that had brought him to this moment. A simple country doctor, now poised to change the course of an entire species' history. But that was the power of human ingenuity, of human determination, the power to adapt, to overcome, to find solutions in even the most unlikely of places. And as he thought of Arva, of the electric charge that had passed between them, he knew that this was about more than just science, more than just duty. It was about connection, about the unbreakable bonds that could form between two beings, no matter how different they might seem on the surface. He smiled to himself as he got to work, feeling a new sense of purpose suffusing his every cell. He was ready for this, ready to embrace his destiny, to use every ounce of his human strength and passion to make a difference in the universe. The future of the Krellian people was in his hands, and in his other, more intimate parts, and he would not let them down. The next few days passed in a blur of activity as Ethan and Arva worked to refine the logistics of their plan. They spent long hours sequestered in the lab, running simulations and perfecting the artificial insemination process that would introduce Ethan's human nectar to Krellian eggs. But amidst the scientific rigor and clinical precision, there was an undeniable undercurrent of tension between them. Ethan found himself hyper-aware of Arva's presence, his skin tingling every time she brushed past him or leaned in close to examine a readout. He tried to tell himself it was just nerves, the natural byproduct of the incredible pressure they were under. But deep down, he knew there was more to it than that. One evening, as they pored over the latest batch of test results, Arva let out a heavy sigh. "I don't know how to thank you for this, Ethan. What you're doing, it's beyond anything I could have ever asked for." He looked up from his work, meeting her gaze. "You don't have to thank me, Arva. I'm just doing what any decent human would do." She shook her head, a wry smile playing at her lips. "No, you're doing what only an extraordinary human would do, risking your own safety, your own genetic legacy for the sake of a species, not your own. It's remarkable." Ethan felt a flush creep up his neck at the intensity of her words. I couldn't stand by and watch your people suffer. Not when I had the power to help." Arva's expression softened, her luminous eyes searching his. "It's more than that, though, isn't it? This connection between us, I've never felt anything like it before." He swallowed hard, his heart pounding in his chest. "Arva, I feel it too, but we have to stay focused on the mission, on saving your species." She nodded slowly, but there was a glint of mischief in her gaze. "Of course, the mission comes first. But that doesn't mean we can't explore this thing between us. In the name of scientific curiosity, of course." Ethan's mouth went dry at the implication in her words. "Scientific curiosity, huh?" Arva leaned in closer, her breath warm against his cheek. "Think about it, Ethan. The more so comfortable we are with each other, the easier this whole process will be. It's only logical." He knew she was right, even as his rational mind screamed at him to be cautious. But looking into her eyes, seeing the desire mingled with the determination there, he felt his reservations melting away. "Okay," he murmured, his voice low and rough. "In the name of science, then." Arva's smile was pure heat as she closed the distance between them, her lips finding his in a searing kiss. Ethan responded instinctively, his hands coming up to tangle in her silky hair as he pulled her closer. They lost themselves in the moment, the rest of the world falling away until there was nothing but the two of them, human and Krellian, bound together by a force stronger than either of them could have imagined. When they finally broke apart, breathless and flushed, Ethan knew that everything had changed. This was no longer just a scientific mission, a clinical exercise in genetic manipulation. It was something deeper, something primal and powerful. A connection that transcended species and circumstance, a bond forged in the crucible of shared purpose and unbridled passion. As they returned to their work, stealing glances and secret smiles across the lab bench, Ethan felt a new sense of determination suffusing his every cell. He would see this through, not just for the sake of the Krellian people, but for Arva, for the incredible, unrestrained female who had captured his heart and ignited his soul. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead, drawing strength from the unbreakable bond between them. A bond that was part science, part destiny, and all heat. The future was theirs for the taking, and Ethan was ready to embrace it with every fiber of his being. For Arva, for her people, and for the incredible potential of human-Krellian connection. The day of the first insemination attempt arrived, and Ethan found himself a bundle of nerves as he prepared for the procedure. He had donated his nectar countless times before, but never like this. Never with the fate of an entire species hanging in the balance. Arva was there to guide him through it, her presence a calming balm to his frayed nerves. She talked him through the process, her voice low and soothing as she explained each step. "Just relax," she murmured, her hand resting gently on his shoulder. "Let your body do what it was designed to do." Ethan nodded, taking a deep breath as he focused on the task at hand. He thought of Arva, of the incredible journey that had brought them to this moment, the trust, the connection, the searing heat between them. It was that heat that carried him through, that sparked his arousal and fueled his determination. He pictured Arva in his mind's eye, her silver blue skin flushed with desire, her luminous eyes heavy-lidded with want. The fantasy carried him over the edge, and he let out a shuddering groan as he filled the collection cup. It was a moment of pure primal release, a physical manifestation of the bond between them. Arva was waiting for him when he emerged, a soft smile on her face. "How do you feel?" she asked, her voice tinged with concern. Ethan let out a breathless laugh. "Like I just ran a marathon, but in a good way." She nodded, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "Well, you did just accomplish quite a feat. The first human to ever donate nectar for the sake of an alien species. That's got to be worth some bragging rights." He grinned, feeling a flush of pride at her words. "I don't know about bragging rights, but it does feel pretty incredible to know that I'm making a difference, that we're making a difference together." Arva's expression softened, her hand coming up to cup his cheek. "Together," she echoed, her voice barely above a whisper. "I like the sound of that." Ethan leaned into her touch, his heart swelling with emotion. "Me too, Arva. Me too." They stayed like that for a long moment, lost in each other's gaze, the weight of their shared purpose hanging heavy in the air between them. Finally, Arva broke the spell, her hand dropping back to her side. "We should get the sample to the lab," she said, her voice brisk and businesslike once more. "Every minute counts." Ethan nodded, straightening his spine as he fell into step beside her. They had a job to do, a mission to complete. But even as they focused on the task at hand, he could feel the undercurrent of something deeper, something stronger than mere duty or obligation. It was a sense of destiny, of two souls entwined by a force greater than either of them could fully understand. A human and a Krellian, bound together by the power of science and the heat of passion. As they worked side by side in the lab, preparing the sample for insemination, Ethan felt a renewed sense of purpose suffusing his every cell. This was what he was meant to do, what he was born for. To use his human strength and virility to save an alien race. To forge an unbreakable bond with an incredible female. To explore the limits of what was possible when two disparate beings came together in perfect harmony. The future was theirs for the taking, and Ethan was ready to embrace it with every fiber of his being. For Arva, for her people, and for the incredible potential of human-Krellian connection. The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity as Ethan and Arva worked tirelessly to inseminate the first batch of Krellian volunteers. It was a delicate process requiring precision, patience, and no small amount of human genetic material. Ethan found himself spending long hours in the donation room, his mind filled with thoughts of Arva as he worked to produce the necessary samples. It was a strange kind of intimacy, a shared purpose that bound them together even when they were apart. And when they were together, the air between them crackled with a palpable tension, a heat that went beyond mere scientific curiosity. They stole glances and secret smiles across the lab bench, their hands brushing together as they worked side by side. But even as their personal connection deepened, they never lost sight of their ultimate goal. The fate of the Krellian species hung in the balance, and they both knew that failure was not an option. Finally, after weeks of tireless effort, the moment of truth arrived. The first batch of inseminated Krellian females underwent their initial scans, and the results were nothing short of miraculous. "Ethan, look at this," Arva breathed, her eyes wide with wonder as she stared at the readout. "Positive implantation across the board. Your nectar, it's working." Ethan felt a rush of emotion at her words, a heady mix of pride, relief, and something deeper, something he couldn't quite name. "We did it," he murmured, his voice rough with feeling. "We actually did it." Arva turned to him, her luminous eyes shining with unshed tears. "You did it, Ethan. Your incredible human virility. It's saving my species." He shook his head, reaching out to take her hand in his. "We did it together, Arva. Your brilliant mind, your tireless dedication. I couldn't have done this without you." She smiled at that, a soft, tender thing that made his heart skip a beat. "Together," she echoed, her fingers twining with his. "Always." The news of their success spread like wildfire, and soon the lab was inundated with hopeful Krellian couples eager to undergo the treatment. Ethan and Arva worked around the clock to keep up with the demand, their bond growing stronger with each passing day. And as the first generation of human Krellian hybrid babies began to be born, healthy and strong and full of promise, Ethan felt a sense of awe and wonder that defied description. He had come to this alien world as a stranger with a heart full of compassion and a mind full of curiosity. But now he was something more. A savior, a hero, a partner in the most incredible journey of his life. And at the center of it all was Arva, the brilliant, beautiful Krellian female who had captured his heart and ignited his soul. Together they had achieved the impossible, had forged a bond that transcended species and circumstance. As they stood together in the nursery, watching the hybrid babies squirm and coo in their incubators, Ethan felt a rush of emotion so powerful it nearly brought him to his knees. "Arva," he whispered, his voice rough with feeling. I love you." She turned to him, her eyes wide with surprise and something deeper, something that made his heart sing. "Ethan," she breathed, her hand coming up to cup his cheek. "I love you too, more than I ever thought possible." They came together then, their lips meeting in a kiss that was both tender and fierce, a promise and a declaration all in one. Human and Krellian, bound together by the power of science and the heat of passion, by the unbreakable bond of love. As they broke apart, breathless and flushed, Arva looked up at Ethan with a mischievous glint in her eye. "You know," she murmured, her voice low and sultry, "as much as I admire your dedication to helping my people, I can't help but feel a little jealous." Ethan frowned, confusion mingling with the desire in his gaze. "Jealous? Of what?" Arva trailed a finger down his chest, her touch leaving sparks of electricity in its wake. "Of all those other Krellian females getting to experience your genetic gifts." Understanding dawned in Ethan's eyes, followed by a flush of heat. "Arva," he breathed, his voice rough with wanting. "Are you saying—" She nodded, her luminous eyes heavy-lidded with desire. "I want to experience it too, Ethan. Not just in a lab, not just through a cold clinical procedure, but with you the natural way, the way it was meant to be." Ethan's heart pounded in his chest, his body responding to her words with a fierce, primal need. "Are you sure?" he managed, his hands coming up to grip her waist. "I don't want to pressure you or make you feel like you have to." Arva silenced him with a finger to his lips, her smile soft and tender. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life, Ethan. I love you, and I want to be with you in every way possible. As a partner, as a lover, and maybe someday as the mother of your child." Ethan's breath caught in his throat, his eyes stinging with sudden tears. "Arva," he whispered, his voice raw with emotion. "I want that too, more than anything." She smiled, her hand curving around the back of his neck to pull him closer. "Then what are we waiting for, my love? Let's make it happen. Right here, right now. The future is ours for the taking." Ethan's heart pounded with fierce, primal anticipation. He pulled Arva flush against him, his large hands splayed possessively across her lower back. "Oh, I'll show you what the future looks like," he growled, his voice low and rough with desire. "A future where you're mine, completely and utterly, where I claim you, body and soul, until there's no doubt in the universe that you belong to me." He nipped at her earlobe, his breath hot against her skin. "Get ready, my gorgeous alien goddess. You're about to experience the full force of human passion, the kind that will leave you trembling and breathless and craving more." In one swift motion, he scooped her up into his arms, his muscles flexing with the effort. Arva let out a delighted gasp, her arms twining around his neck as he carried her off to their shared quarters. The future was theirs for the taking, and they were more than ready to seize it, one passionate, primal, universe-altering embrace at a time. In a distant star system on a barren planet ravaged by war, a peculiar sight caught Captain James Walker's eye as he surveyed the ruins of an alien city. Amidst the rubble and debris, he spotted a tiny figure with blue skin mottled with white speckles and a shock of pure white hair. It was a young alien child, clearly lost and alone. As he approached cautiously, his heart sank at the sight of her emaciated frame. She couldn't have been more than 5 Earth years old. Her large, luminous eyes, a striking violet hue, met his gaze with a mix of fear and desperate hope. "Hey there, little one," James said softly, kneeling down to her level. "Don't be afraid. I'm here to help." The child tilted her head, clearly not understanding his words, but sensing his gentle tone. James reached into his pack and pulled out a nutrient bar. He unwrapped it and held it out to her. Tentatively, she reached out and snatched it from his hand, devouring it in mere seconds. James's heart broke as he realized the depths of her hunger. This poor child, orphaned and left to fend for herself in the aftermath of a brutal conflict. He couldn't just leave her here to starve. "Come on, let's get you somewhere safe," he said, extending his hand. The girl hesitated for a moment before placing her tiny blue hand in his, her skin cool to the touch. As James led her back to his ship, he couldn't help but marvel at the strange twists of fate that had brought them together. He, a battle-hardened soldier, and she, an orphaned alien child. 2 lonely souls in a vast, unforgiving universe. On board his ship, James set about tending to the child's immediate needs. He provided her with food and water, marveling at her voracious appetite. Using the ship's medical scanner, he confirmed she was a member of the Empyrean race, a species known for their resilience and adaptability. "Looks like it's just you and me now, little blue," James said, watching as the child explored the ship's interior with wide-eyed curiosity. "I promise I'll take care of you. We'll figure this out together." And so began an unlikely partnership, a grizzled human soldier and a blue-skinned, white-speckled alien girl, both orphaned by the cruelties of war. James knew the road ahead would be challenging, but he was determined to give this child a chance at a better life. As the ship lifted off, leaving the war-torn planet behind, James couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. Perhaps this was his chance for redemption, a way to atone for the sins of his past. And for the little alien girl, it was a chance at a new beginning, a family to call her own. Their journey together had only just begun, but already the bonds of love and loyalty were forming. In the vastness of space, they had found each other, 2 lost souls united by the strange machinations of destiny. And together, they would face whatever challenges the universe saw fit to throw their way. As the ship hurtled through the void of space, James found himself growing increasingly attached to his young charge. He'd never been one for sentimentality, but there was something about the little alien girl that tugged at his heartstrings. He watched as she explored the ship with boundless curiosity, her white hair bobbing as she darted from one room to another. Despite the hardships she'd endured, there was a spark of resilience in her violet eyes, a determination to survive and thrive. James set about creating a makeshift living space for her, converting one of the ship's spare rooms into a cozy bedroom. He replicated some child-sized clothing and a few soft toys, hoping to provide her with a sense of comfort and normalcy. As the days turned into weeks, James and the child fell into a comfortable routine. He taught her basic English words, and she picked up the language with astonishing speed. Soon they were able to communicate in simple sentences, bridging the gap between their worlds. "What's your name, little one?" James asked one evening as they sat together in the ship's galley, sharing a meal of replicated stew. The child looked up at him, her violet eyes wide. "Amaya," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. James smiled. "Amaya, that's a beautiful name." Amaya beamed at the praise, her blue skin flushing a deeper shade of indigo. James felt a surge of affection for the little girl, a fierce protectiveness that caught him off guard. As they traveled through the stars, James began to teach Amaya about the wonders of the universe. He showed her the shimmering nebulae, the swirling galaxies, and the countless worlds that dotted the cosmic landscape. Amaya drank in the knowledge like a sponge, her eyes wide with wonder and awe. But even as they bonded, James knew that he couldn't keep Amaya with him forever. He was a soldier, not a father, and his life was far too dangerous for a child. He needed to find her a proper home, a family that could give her the love and stability she deserved. And so, with a heavy heart, James set a course for the nearest space station, determined to find Amaya a new family. He spent hours poring over databases, searching for the perfect match, a couple who would cherish and protect her as their own. When they finally docked at the station, James took Amaya by the hand and led her through the bustling crowds. He tried to ignore the ache in his chest, the sense of impending loss that threatened to overwhelm him. As they approached the adoption agency, Amaya looked up at him with trusting eyes. "James, are you going to be my daddy now?" she asked innocently. James felt a lump form in his throat. He knelt down and took her tiny hands in his own. "Amaya, I wish I could be your daddy, but I have a dangerous job, and I can't give you the life you deserve. I'm going to find you a new family, people who will love you and keep you safe." Amaya's lower lip trembled, and James felt his heart shatter into a million pieces. He pulled her into a tight hug, fighting back the tears that threatened to fall. "I'll always be here for you, Amaya," he whispered. "No matter what happens, you'll always have a place in my heart." But as James moved a step through the doors of the adoption agency, Amaya clung to his hand, her tiny fingers gripping his with surprising strength. "No, James," she cried, her violet eyes brimming with tears. "I don't want anyone else to be my daddy. I want to stay with you." James froze, his heart racing as he looked down at the little girl who had come to mean so much to him. "Amaya, he began, but she cut him off, her voice filled with a fierce determination that belied her young age. "You're the only one who can give me a better childhood," she said, her words tumbling out in a rush. "Even if it's difficult or dangerous, I want to be with you. Please, James, don't leave me." James felt a wave of emotion wash over him, a mix of love, fear, and overwhelming responsibility. He knew that taking on the role of Amaya's father would be the most challenging mission of his life, fraught with danger and uncertainty. But as he looked into her pleading eyes, he knew that he could never abandon her. She had become a part of him, a light in the darkness of his world, and he would move heaven and earth to keep her safe. With a shaky breath, James knelt down and gathered Amaya into his arms, holding her close as she clung to him like a lifeline. "Okay, little one," he whispered, his voice rough with emotion. "We'll stay together. I promise I'll always be here for you, no matter what." Amaya buried her face in his neck, her tears soaking into his shirt. "I love you, James," she murmured, her voice muffled against his skin. "I love you too, Amaya," James replied, his heart swelling with a love he had never known before, more than anything in the universe. And with those words, James rose to his feet, Amaya's hand clasped tightly in his own. Together they turned away from the adoption agency and stepped out into the bustling space station, ready to face whatever challenges the future might bring. They were no longer just a soldier and an orphaned alien child, but a family, bound by love and a fierce determination to protect one another. And as they walked hand in hand through the crowds, James knew that he had finally found his true calling, to be the father that Amaya deserved, and to give her the love and safety that had been so cruelly denied her. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but with Amaya by his side, James knew that he could face anything the universe threw their way. As James and Amaya walked hand in hand through the bustling space station, a new sense of purpose filled James's heart. He knew that taking on the role of Amaya's father would be the most challenging and rewarding mission of his life, and he was determined to give her the love and stability she deserved. Their first stop was to gather supplies for their journey. James used his military credentials to secure a larger ship, one with enough space for Amaya to grow and thrive. He stocked up on food, clothing, and educational materials, determined to provide her with every opportunity to learn and flourish. As they settled into their new home among the stars, James began to teach Amaya about the universe around them. He showed her how to navigate by the stars, how to identify different species of alien flora and fauna, and how to repair and maintain the ship's systems. Amaya proved to be an eager and quick learner, her bright mind absorbing knowledge like a sponge. She delighted in each new discovery, her violet eyes sparkling with wonder and curiosity. But even as they fell into a comfortable routine, James knew that the universe was a dangerous place. He had made many enemies over the years, and he feared that his past might one day catch up with him. His fears were realized when one day a distress signal came through on the ship's communication system. A nearby colony was under attack by a ruthless band of space pirates, and they were calling for help. James hesitated, torn between his desire to keep Amaya safe and his duty to protect the innocent. But when he looked into Amaya's eyes, he saw a fierce determination that matched his own. "We have to help them, James," she said, her voice steady and sure. "It's the right thing to do." James felt a surge of pride and love for his brave little girl. He knew that she was right and that he could not turn his back on those in need. Together, they set a course for the besieged colony, ready to face whatever dangers lay ahead. As they approached the planet, they saw the pirate ships circling like vultures. Their weapons trained on the defenseless settlement below. James felt a familiar rush of adrenaline as he prepared for battle. He knew that he would have to use all of his skills and cunning to keep Amaya safe and defeat the pirates. But as he looked over at his daughter, he saw a steely resolve in her eyes that took his breath away. She may have been small, but she had the heart of a warrior, and he knew that together they could overcome any obstacle. With a fierce battle cry, James launched their ship into the fray, his weapons blazing as he fought to protect the innocent and defend his family. Amaya manned the ship's defenses, her quick reflexes and sharp mind proving invaluable in the heat of battle. Together they fought with all their might, their bond as father and daughter giving them strength and courage beyond measure. And when the dust settled and the pirates lay defeated at their feet, James gathered Amaya into his arms, his heart swelling with pride and love. "You were amazing, little one," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm so proud of you." Amaya beamed up at him, her violet eyes shining with love and admiration. "We make a good team, don't we, Dad?" she said, her voice filled with warmth and affection. James felt a lump form in his throat at the sound of that precious word. "The best team in the universe," he replied, his heart overflowing with joy and gratitude for the incredible little girl who had become his whole world. And as they set off into the stars once more, ready to face whatever challenges the future might bring, James knew that he had finally found his true purpose in life, to be the father that Amaya deserved, and to love and protect her with every fiber of his being. Years passed, and Amaya grew into a strong, intelligent, and compassionate young woman. Under James's guidance and love, she had blossomed like a rare flower, her unique abilities and kind heart making her a force for good in the universe. Together, they had faced countless challenges and adventures, their bond as father and daughter growing stronger with each passing day. They had become a legend among the stars, known far and wide as the fearless duo who stood up for the weak and oppressed, and who never backed down from a fight. But even as they reveled in their shared purpose, James knew that there was one final challenge they had to face: the truth about Amaya's past. He had always known that Amaya was special, that her blue skin and white speckled hair set her apart from any other species he had encountered. And as she grew older, her unique abilities began to manifest in ways that defied explanation. She could communicate with animals and plants, her gentle touch soothing even the most agitated creatures. She could sense the emotions of those around her, her empathetic nature allowing her to offer comfort and guidance to those in need. And when she was angry or frightened, her skin would glow with an otherworldly light, a shimmering aura that seemed to pulse with power and energy. James had always suspected that there was more to Amaya's story than he knew, and as she approached adulthood, he knew that it was time to seek answers. "Amaya," James said one evening, as they sat together in the ship's observation deck, gazing out at the stars, "there's something I've been meaning to talk to you about." Amaya turned to him, her violet eyes filled with curiosity. "What is it, Dad?" James took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. "I've always known that you were special, Amaya. Your abilities, your connection to the world around you, it's unlike anything I've ever seen, and I think it's time we found out why." Amaya's eyes widened, a mix of excitement and trepidation flickering across her face. "What do you mean?" "I mean that it's time for us to uncover the truth about your past, about where you came from and who your people were. I've been doing some research and I think I've found a lead." Amaya leaned forward, her heart racing with anticipation. "Tell me everything." Together they set out on a quest to uncover the truth about Amaya's origins, following a trail of clues and whispers that led them to the farthest reaches of the galaxy. Their journey was fraught with danger and uncertainty as they faced hostile alien races, treacherous space anomalies, and the ever-present threat of those who sought to exploit Amaya's powers for their own gain. But through it all, James and Amaya's love for each other never wavered. They were a team, a family, and nothing could tear them apart. Finally, after months of searching, they found themselves on a remote, uncharted planet, standing before a crumbling temple that seemed to pulse with an ancient, otherworldly energy. As they stepped inside, Amaya's skin began to glow with a blinding light, her eyes shining with a wisdom and power that seemed to transcend time and space. "Dad, what's happening to me?" Amaya whispered, her voice trembling with awe and fear. James placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, his own heart pounding with anticipation. "I think we're about to find out, little one." And there in the heart of the temple, they found the truth they had been seeking. Amaya was the last of her kind, a descendant of an ancient race of empaths and healers who had once been the guardians of the galaxy. Her people had been wiped out by a great cataclysm, their powers and knowledge lost to the ages. But Amaya had survived, sent out into the universe as a tiny child, her destiny waiting to be fulfilled. As the truth washed over them, James felt a sense of awe and humility. He had always known that Amaya was special, but he had never imagined the true scope of her powers and purpose. "Amaya, do you understand what this means?" James asked, his voice thick with emotion. "You have a great destiny ahead of you, a purpose that goes beyond anything we could have imagined." Amaya looked up at him, her eyes shining with determination and love. "I understand, Dad, and I'm ready to face whatever comes next as long as you're by my side." James pulled her into a tight embrace, his heart swelling with pride and love. "Always, little one. We're in this together, no matter what." And so, with renewed purpose and determination, James and Amaya set out once more, ready to face whatever challenges the future might bring. They were no longer just a father and daughter, but a force for good, a beacon of hope in a universe that desperately needed their light. As they walked hand in hand out of the temple and into the unknown, James knew that he had been blessed beyond measure. For he had not just found a daughter, but a true partner and equal, a shining star that would guide him through the darkest of nights and the brightest of days. "Dad," Amaya said, her voice filled with love and gratitude. "Thank you for always believing in me, for being my guiding light." James smiled down at her, his heart overflowing with emotion. "It's been my honor and privilege, Amaya, and I know that together we can face anything the universe throws our way. And together they would face the future with love, courage, and an unshakable belief in the power of the human spirit to overcome any obstacle and achieve any dream."